Hello and welcome to the main edition of World News. I'm Anna Jabłońska. Let's take a look at the latest headlines. The dust is still settling after Prime Minister Johnson's resignation. Report from war-torn Ukraine. Bundestag's majority says no to Ukrainian fighters. Former Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe, has been assassinated by a single gunman during his political speech in the western city of Nara. The former leader of the Japanese government died from 2 gunshot wounds in the hospital just hours after the attack. The perpetrator has been apprehended by the police.
These terrifying scenes took place at a political rally in the city of Nara in western Japan. Former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was delivering his speech when a single gunman shot him from the back 2 times in what appears to be a handmade shotgun. Just hours after the attack, the head of the hospital where Shinzo Abe was transported to announced his death.
We tried to resuscitate him at the emergency center, but unfortunately he passed away at 5:03 p.m.
Current Prime Minister Fumio Kishida did not shy away from strong words when he learned about the murder of his predecessor.
We cannot accept that this violent act took place during an election, the foundation of our democracy. In the strongest terms, I condemn this attack.
Shinzo Abe was Japan's longest-serving prime minister. He made a positive impact not only in his own country but also abroad. Words of consolation and respect came from all over the world.
His global leadership through uncharted times will be remembered by many. The United Kingdom stands with you at this dark and sad time.
He was one of the first leaders I met when I became PM. He was deeply committed to his role, but also generous and kind.
His sharp insight on economy and global affairs always made a deep impression on me.
Japan is losing a great prime minister who dedicated his life to his country and worked for balance in the world.
A great leader of Japan and wonderful friend of Poland has passed away today. We are all shocked by the brutal murder of former Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe.
Meanwhile, the Japanese law enforcement is trying to establish the motive behind the attack. The perpetrator is a 41-year-old man named Tetsuya Yamagami, who shot Abe 2 times with a handmade weapon. He reportedly served 3 years in the Japanese Navy until 2005. According to local media outlets, Yamagami was dissatisfied with Mr. Abe's political beliefs. Japanese citizens were shocked by the news of the assassination.
There are many gun crimes happening abroad, but I never imagined it would happen in Japan and that a former prime minister would die that way.
This is not the United States, so I am in shock, and he was only delivering a speech for the upper house election.
Shinzo Abe served as Japan's prime minister multiple times, including for 8 years straight since 2012. In 2020, he had to resign due to health issues. He was widely recognized as a respectable and intelligent politician, a symbol of democratic rules. He was a firm supporter of increased defense and assertive foreign policies. He was also a great ally to Poland and a firm critic of Russia's aggressive moves. He was 67 years old.
The resignation of Boris Johnson from his position as Prime Minister could have major repercussions not only for the United Kingdom, but also for its ally in need, Ukraine. The soon-to-be former head of the British government was a staunch supporter of the country, defending its sovereignty from Russia.
The resignation of Boris Johnson comes at a very difficult time, as the United Kingdom has been one of the most prominent allies of Ukraine, currently fighting against the Russian invaders.
I think he was a galvanizing force in bringing in the United States, in stiffening the resolves of some of NATO's weaker members, and alongside Poland and the Baltic states, of being at the very forefront of helping Ukraine fight this war.
However, according to experts, there won't be much difference to UK's stance on Ukraine, despite the change of leadership.
However controversial Boris Johnson has been as a Prime Minister, the one issue on which he spoke for the whole of the United Kingdom was on the Ukraine war. So whatever succeeds Boris Johnson, whoever is the new Prime Minister, I am 100% certain that our policy on helping Ukraine will not change.
Despite the rather scandalous circumstances of Johnson's resignation, the people of Ukraine still see him as a staunch supporter of their country.
He helped our country a lot and is helping until now. He is the soul of Ukraine, one would say.
It's a shame because we need as much support for the country as possible. If there are influential politicians abroad, we need them. We don't want to lose him because he really helps us.
Experts from the UK predict Johnson's successor will likely continue his policy of sending weapons and financial aid to Ukraine.
Ben Wallace currently leads the opinion polls of Conservative voters in who they would support as the next leader of the Conservative Party. And Wallace, himself a former military officer, has been alongside Johnson in each step of the way in terms of providing and encouraging and delivering military support for Ukraine. So I feel that whatever happens when Boris leaves the stage in October, that nonetheless Ukraine and our support for Ukraine from the United Kingdom will be in safe hands from the UK.
The Conservative Party is now searching for a new leader, who is then expected to take up the mantle as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Until the new party leader is found, Boris Johnson will continue to serve as the head of the government.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov was boycotted by Western diplomats during the second day of the G20 Summit taking place in Indonesia. The participants did not take a traditional family photo and did not have dinner together. Russia is facing exclusion from the West ever since February 24th.
During the second day of the G20 Summit in Bali, foreign ministers and top diplomats gathered for a ministerial meeting held under the theme Building a More Peaceful, Stable and Prosperous World Together.
Here we are, sitting together for the first time to discuss important issues confronting all of us. I do hope that from the discussion, we will find ways to move forward.
Present at the forum was Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, who attracted much attention. In Bali, Lavrov blamed the United States and Australia over recent diplomatic breakdowns amidst Moscow's invasion of Ukraine.
It was not us who abandoned all contacts, it was the United States. That's all I can say. And we are not running after anybody suggesting meetings. If they don't want to talk, it's their choice.
Western diplomats from the G7 group did not agree to take a family photo together with Lavrov and refused to take part in the welcoming dinner at the summit because of him.
That the Russian government does not want the United Nations to be part of the negotiations on grain export, and that the Russian foreign minister spent much of the negotiations here, not in the room but outside the room, underscores that there is not a millimeter of willingness on the part of the Russian government to talk at this time.
The war in Ukraine was a major topic of the summit.
There is a strong push from many participants for an immediate end to the war and peaceful resolution of conflict through diplomacy and negotiations.
Food and energy security that are being influenced by the war in Ukraine were also touched upon at the summit. The G20 consists of developing countries as well, and these are the most worried about food shortages and rising energy prices.
And now over to Ukraine, where our correspondent is right now. Ovidiusz Nicieja is in Kiev to give us the latest report from the war-torn country. Hello, Ovidiusz. Please tell us, what are the leading stories in Ukraine?
The Russians are now making what looks like an operational pause here in Ukraine. According to the UK's military intelligence, they're now regrouping to soon begin a new offensive in the Donbas, particularly on the Sieversk direction. And at the same time, the Ukrainian counteroffensive continues, especially in the south of the country. There, the Ukrainian forces are very slowly moving towards the occupied Kherson. And the news of the day here in Ukraine is that the president of this country, Volodymyr Zelensky, went himself to visit the Ukrainian frontline positions.
The president of Ukraine paid a visit to the soldiers on the country's southern front line.
I would like to greet you all. Thank you all for your daily big and heroic work. Thanks for being alive.
President Zelensky personally decorated the Ukrainian soldiers in the Dnipropetrovsk region. Afterwards, he joined a meeting with military commanders. The front line in Ukraine has stabilized in the recent days. The Russian army reportedly lost around 7,000 soldiers in the process of taking control just over Severodonetsk and Lysychansk. It is presumed that the Russians now need rest and regrouping before they can even attempt to resume the offensive. But their air attacks on the territories controlled by Ukraine do not stop.
It is not the first day when the city has been steadily bombarded with rocket artillery, rocket shells and cluster bombs. The enemy is at a distance of up to 10 kilometers in the direction of Izium. The firing is intensifying.
The residents of many places in the Donbass who are not willing to evacuate their homes must live their everyday lives in the constant presence of destruction, death, and the sound of artillery, which rarely stops.
Now, Ovidiusz, the war is not slowing down. What are the morale of Ukrainian soldiers?
Well, the morale of Ukrainian soldiers remains remarkably high. The president of this country, who visited the front line today, said after this visit that he saw in the eyes of the defenders of Ukraine the will to carry on and the deep belief that Ukraine will win this conflict. According to Ukrainian officials, there are now more than 1 million people defending this country, and these people are highly motivated to keep defending the country from the invasion.
Well, let's hope it will stay this way. Ovidiusz, thank you very much for your report. Stay safe, and we will talk to you soon. German parliament deputies rejected a proposal by the CDU and CSU parties to provide 200 armored personnel carriers to Ukraine. The Federal Republic of Germany's defense minister warned against eluding the Bundeswehr.
A proposal by the CDU and CSU parties to provide 200 armored personnel carriers to Ukraine failed to find a majority in the Bundestag, which voted against the proposal of the Christian Democrat parliamentary group. The decision is widely criticized considering fairly few deliveries of military equipment done by Germany, especially in comparison to other EU members.
I think that Germany is not doing enough in terms of that it could do more. Denmark is sending more military aid than France, which is similar size, a little bit less than Germany, but nevertheless. We have Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, and Poland, which is of course bigger than the Baltic states, sending a lot of military equipment to Ukraine. We were saying that from very, very beginning that Ukraine needs more weapons.
The vehicles in question were Fuchs, which have been on Bundeswehr equipment since 1979 and are now being replaced by newer vehicles. A similar move was made earlier by Poland, which donated more than 200 T-72 M1 tanks to Ukraine to be replaced in the following years by M1 Abrams tanks purchased in the US.
And while German MPs reject military help for Ukraine, there are places where aid is endless, and even ordinary people are dropping in. While in Poland the Bayraktar fundraising continues, the Lithuanians have already bought a famous drone and will soon hand it over to the Ukrainians. Our correspondent in Vilnius has more on the story.
This week, Lithuanian government have approved to transfer the Turkish-made Bayraktar drone to Ukraine. Lithuanian people have raised almost 6 million in 3 days to buy Bayraktar military drone for Ukraine and have called him Vanagas, or in translation, a hawk. Inspired by that initiative, the Turkish manufacturer have gave the drone for free to Lithuania.
Bayraktar TB2 actually became a symbol of hope and resistance, and this campaign started in Lithuania. So hundreds of thousands of people gathered and attended this campaign. So we as a company should do something.
As the funds which were raised by people now could be used somewhere else, the decision was made to use 1.5 million euros to equip the drone, while the rest of the money will be used to support Ukraine humanitarily. From Vilnius for TVP World, Gabriela Jankauskaitė.
And coming up on World News, new gas contracts. Laying the ground for Solidarity Transport Hub. Despite most coronavirus restrictions were lifted across Europe and North America in the first half of the year, COVID-19 is returning with infections growing worldwide. China is introducing new restrictive measures against the unvaccinated. Governments in Europe are debating on how to react to this new wave of the pandemic.
To stop the spread of the coronavirus, Beijing authorities have announced the first universal vaccination requirement for COVID-19 in China. From the 11th of July, a vaccination certificate will be required to enter certain public places, including gyms, museums, and libraries. In Italy, 100 times more infections with the coronavirus are now being registered than at the same time a year ago. The number of people hospitalized due to COVID-19 is 4 times higher than at the beginning of July last year. Other Western European countries such as France and Germany are reporting more than 100,000 new cases each day. In Poland, the country's health minister reported a 60% increase in the number of new cases over the last 2 weeks. He assured that the Polish government will not introduce any restrictions if the number of hospitalized remains below 5,000 countrywide. There are currently 450 people hospitalized because of COVID-19 in Poland. Despite thousands of new cases are reported each day, the current wave of the pandemic is causing much fewer deaths than previously. This is thanks to widespread vaccination and the milder severity of symptoms the current mutations of the Omicron are causing.
Norway will become the leading supplier of natural gas to Poland early next year. This was announced at a meeting of Polish Climate and Environment Minister Anna Moskva and Norway's Minister of Oil Industry and Energy in Oslo.
At the beginning of the next year, Norway will become the main supplier of natural gas to Poland. The decision has been highly anticipated in face of embargo on Russian supplies.
So obviously the decision to transport gas via Baltic pipe to Poland from the Norwegian continental shelf is a strategic decision, and obviously this is the right direction to diversify further gas supplies for Eastern and Central Europe.
Poland has been preparing for several years to give up the import of Russian gas, and delivery of first quantities of Norwegian gas will be possible from October 2022 via the Baltic pipeline. A soon-to-be-finished project is designed to create a new corridor for natural gas supplies from Norwegian fields to the Danish and Polish markets. Specialists, however, have concerns about the new imports, pointing to several difficulties.
We must remember that gas fields at the Norwegian continental shelf are already producing gas at the maximum capacity. All the other European countries are tapping into those reserves. Those are mature fields, so increasing the production will be extremely difficult.
Additionally, specialists are worried that the arranged amount of 3 billion cubic meters per year will not utilize the total capacity of the pipe of 10 billion cubic meters, which in turn could create more costs than profits. Either way, the new step in Polish energy policy is a necessity, enabling supplies of natural gas independently from Russian deliveries.
The 2022 edition of a bilateral event designed to encourage dialogue and enhance cooperation between Poland and the UK. The Belvedere Forum has taken place in London's Chatham House over the last 2 days. Our correspondent to London, Klaudia Czerwińska, has more.
It is here at the Chatham House, home to the institution tasked with providing space for dialogue, where since 2017 the annual British-Polish bilateral event known as the Belvedere Forum jointly takes place, while organizing cooperation with the Polish Institute of International Affairs. This place brings together a group of people from different fields of expertise, including civil society, business, academia, politics, and NGOs, to strengthen the partnership between the two countries and encourage an exchange of ideas.
Polish-British relations are in very good shape. We are in a constant contact discussing all the challenges which are ahead of us. Not only in bilateral relations, there are many opportunities.
This year's edition of the event focused on one of the key European and global challenges of today, the war in Ukraine.
Both of our countries are very much interested in further strengthening Ukrainian statehood, and that's why we are offering our assistance, our support to Ukraine in order to keep the stability in the entire Euro-Atlantic region. Both of our countries are very important allies.
This year's event stretched across 2 days, Thursday and Friday, providing some much-needed room for conversation in this dynamically changing environment.
We've always had a large Polish community in the United Kingdom, but meeting Polish colleagues who are living in Poland itself, that's a different dimension. And of course, half our forums have been in Warsaw or in Poland, and the other half in the United Kingdom. I think also what's happened over the last 5 months since the war in Ukraine began, Poland and the United Kingdom have become Ukraine's strongest allies.
So in a way, Great Britain is now back in Europe, in Central Europe, and there's a lot of talk about closer relation, Poland, Ukraine, in the UK.
As stressed by both sides, the cooperation between Poland and the UK is an important foundation to build upon further, especially in times of the greatest test. From central London for TVP World, this was Klaudia Czerwińska.
Polish government has started work on a government bill to streamline the investment process related to the creation of the Solidarity Transport Hub, a mega project aimed to create main airport and network of highways and railways in Poland.
The Investment Process Improvement Act is another step in the preparations for the construction of Solidarity Transport Hub. According to officials, so far the preparations are going according to plan, and any partial deviations from the schedule are being bridged by ongoing project management. Solidarity Transport Hub is a mega project aimed at the construction of a new, built-from-scratch airport to be located in central Poland. The planned launch of the port is June 2027, and the combined airport and train station will plan to serve 40 million passengers per year and ultimately around 100 million. Apart from the airport itself, the project also includes new high-speed train connections around Poland, significantly reducing time of travel. A construction of a high-speed train to Frankfurt in Germany is also planned, which is to shorten the time travel to Berlin below 3.5 hours.
And with me to talk about the Solidarity Transport Hub, a new greenfield airport prepared by Polish government since 2017, is Marcin Horała, Deputy Minister of Infrastructure, government representative for the Solidarity Transport Hub. Sir, thank you very much for being here with us.
Oh, it's a pleasure being here.
Now, can you please tell us about the scale of this project? How big is it going to be, the capacity of it, so that our viewers will understand how huge of a project this is?
Well, actually, the whole program itself, because it's an investment program containing tens of projects, the biggest one being a new hub international airport, is an investment program of almost 50 billion euros that will build a new transport system for Poland with a new hub international airport at the center and the heart, high-speed rail system, which Poland is currently missing, and also some additional road infrastructural development investments.
Mm-hmm. Now, when will the construction of this begin? And is the war in Ukraine impacting that decision?
Well, actual construction works are scheduled, so the groundbreaking is scheduled for next year. Mm-hmm. And the war in Ukraine didn't have a significant impact. As we discussed 2 years ago, whether shouldn't we postpone or cancel because of the COVID pandemic, now because of war in Ukraine. When building transport systems, you are thinking in terms of tens of years and generations. So there will be, unfortunately, a lot of crises, maybe some pandemic, maybe some war, but it doesn't change the needs of Polish people and which parts of Polish infrastructure needs to be built up or enhanced. If you think about the Chopin Airport in Warsaw, the civil airport there was located in the 30s last century, so it lasted for 100 years almost when it became inefficient and insufficient for our needs. So we are thinking long-term and short-term occurrences. Everything what happens around the world is not going to derail us.
So next year we will
next
start.
year the groundbreaking, we start construction works. First commercial season for the airport should be 2028, and the program in high-speed rail we will start delivering first connections in 2027, 2028, and the final full system should be ready in 2034.
Now, those who are not in favor of this investment say that why do we need another port like this in the region? What is your answer to that?
Well, currently there is no hub international airport, not only in Poland, but in Central and Eastern Europe. This whole market is serviced by Western airports, by Munich, Frankfurt or Amsterdam. Actually, many people from Poland and from Central Europe had their own experience that when they needed to fly east, they had to fly west first, catch a connecting flight from Frankfurt, for example, then fly back over Poland to Singapore or to Tokyo or to Seoul. So the whole market is here, but there is no capacity, no possibility to service it. We are losing this part of the market, so it's tailored to the needs. It's not too big. It's not. It won't be the biggest airport in Europe. It will be just as needed.
Now, how will this Solidarity Transport Hub affect our Polish economy and the regions?
Well, as a study made by AP Kearney shows, the program, meaning direct investment, but also indirect impact on the economy and on the society because of world-class connectivity, which is currently missed in Poland. If you think about what Poland is still missing in becoming a really well-developed country, connectivity, transport system, first league transport system or world-class transport system is one of those biggest needs. So if we will fulfill that, that means that the Polish economy will get additional boost. So it's estimated around 300,000 new jobs and well-paid, high specialized jobs, and almost 1 billion zlotys, additional 1 billion zlotys to Polish GDP.
Now, are 3C's member states also supporting this project?
Yes, of course. If you look at our high-speed rail system, it's interconnected through borders. For example, to the Baltic states, the Rail Baltica project is connected to one of our so-called spokes. Another one is the V4 high-speed rail project. We are connected with them, and maybe in the future, if you look at the plans on rebuilding Ukraine after the war, one of those projects is high-speed rail to Kiev, Warsaw, and part of it is already in the process by STH, of course, the Polish part.
Now, General Ben Hodges, former commander of U.S. ground forces in Europe, stated, and here I'm going to quote, "Poland's planned new hub is what NATO needs in terms of military mobility and what the European Union has in mind when discussing military mobility." Now, are the events that are taking place in Ukraine make this project so much more important than before?
We've been aware of that, so maybe it's more publicly known that it's so important also in this area, because it will dramatically increase availability of transport for military personnel, military equipment to Poland, and via Poland then distribution in the whole eastern flank of NATO. War in Ukraine shown how important infrastructure is, how important is the physical possibility to move things from place to place, and how purely physical possibilities do matter, because when we lived in a globalized world, sometimes people tended to think that physical things just kind of appear. We buy them in China or wherever, and they just appear on our doorstep. No, you have to have actual connection, railroad, airport, whatsoever. And when harder times come, when there's a war, some of those connections are cut off. So you have to have possibility at your country. You have to be, let's say, independent or sovereign also in terms of transport and infrastructure.
So the location of the port is also a crucial place for this to be built?
It's almost in the middle of Poland, because it's in the heart of Polish transport system. If you look at, for example, it's just at the A2 highway, near A1 highway, near the so-called central railway, which is actually cut or built in half, because it should be built from southern Poland to the sea, to Gdańsk. We are going, that's the part of the STH investment program also, to have it finished. So it is, of course, near Warsaw, but between Warsaw and Łódź, so between first and third biggest Polish city. So it's in the transport heart of Poland.
Now, you visited Korea to talk about this project. Can you tell us the details of this meeting?
Of course, the visit had two parts: the political one and the more more business part. The political one was important because of the change of government in Korea. So the new government underlined that the Korea is, apart from change of the government, the decision stays the same. Korea is really involved in the project and sees great potential in it, so it was really important. But also the business part, meeting with our partners from Incheon Airport or Incheon International Airport Corporation, which is now a strategic advisor to STH, but it's also in the front runner in the ongoing process of selecting a strategic partner or strategic investor. We also met with financial institutions because we are looking also for financial investors, also with engineering companies, engineering parts of Samsung and Hyundai corporations, and also with Korean National Rail to talk about Korean experiences in building high-speed rail system.
So why Korea? Why do they want to invest here?
Well, if you look from the east, from Far East, Poland is a gateway to Europe. It's the closest access point when you can catch your connecting flight or you can repack your goods to distribute all over Europe. So of course, this question should be directed to the Korean side, especially, but as far as I can tell, they view Poland as a great stepping stone to expansion to all over Europe. And there's quite a lot of Korean investments in Poland at the moment also, so there is also good experience and good faith between the partners.
And with the previous government, you also had good cooperation?
Yes, of course. It's really nice, and it's really nice to have, not always obvious that governments can change and party in power can change, but the main priorities of the policy of the state remains the same.
Now, what about other airports around in the region? Because there are quite few of them and they're big. Are they going to compete with this hub in Poland?
Well, if you look at in the central European region, you don't have big hub international airport. We have quite a big airport in Prague, in Vienna, in Helsinki maybe, but all of those are, let's say, 20+ million passengers, just like Chopin Airport, and are not offering good connections all over the world. Actually, this is the problem also for a lot of Polish airlines, that they don't have their mother hub that they could build their network of connections from. Because of that, as STH would be the first one. As Polish market for itself is big enough to sustain the business case for the airport, Poland is enough, but as the STH will come into being, it will also provide services for the whole region.
And what are the estimates of how many people will be able to travel? How many connections will there be? Our main base is the estimation made by IATA, International Airport Association, that is, well, I think the most important one of those in the world. And their prognosis says that we are going to reach 40 million passengers from biggest Polish airport quite quickly. So this is the first part of our construction capacity for 40 million passengers. But actually the business break-even point is around 22-23 million passengers. And Chopin Airport in 2019 handled almost 20 million passengers. It was full. That's one of the reasons that we have to build STH. So the business case is really strong and the demand is there. If you compare Chopin Airport, biggest Polish airport, handling 20 million passengers, for example, with biggest airports in Spain and France and in Germany and in other big European countries, Chopin is very, very small for the size of Poland. So the need is quite obvious. And when will it be ready? You mentioned it before.
2027, end of construction works. But of course, there's testing and so on. So I would guess at the moment, estimate that 2028, maybe summer 2028 will be first full commercial season for the STH. Of course, as is in any investment project, there's a lot of risks. Some of them unmanageable by the investor on the part, for example, on the environmental procedures or other legal procedures. But the schedule is very ambitious, but we are, at the moment, in the schedule, we experience no delays, so I hope we can keep it up.
Well, good luck with everything. Thank you very much for your time and insights.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for watching World News. Stay with us for more news and comments.